References are not actually used very often for scalar variables. They're much more often used for arrays and hashes and combinations thereof. In this movie, we're going to talk about array references. We'll go ahead and we'll make a copy of refs.pl, and we'll call it arrayref.pl. And we'll go ahead and open that up. And in this case, we're going to declare this as an array reference. And so array references are actually made with the square bracket. And they can be all on one line, or they can be moved across lines like that. All those little red dots will go away when I save. There we go. In this case, we have it on multiple lines because oftentimes when you're declaring an array or a list or a reference to such, you've got so much data that you don't want to put it all on one line. So it tends to be broken up across lines. And I like to indent them like this so that I have some idea of what belongs to what. And now as we run this, what we'll get is this result, which will say that it's an array reference. And you'll see array and an address. So that's what that is an address. And so when you print a reference, what you get is a representation of that reference so that you can see what the type is. And in this case, we have an array reference. So we can use this array reference by just putting an @ sign in front of the $sign. And so, for example, if we wanted to join this, and we've seen how we can do this, join it with, say, colons, and we can use this just like we can any other list or array, and we save that and run it. We'll see that we get all of these different values. The first one is this is the Perl 5 references chapter, and then there's a colon, and then 42, and then another colon, and another string, and a colon, and one more value. And so we have dereferenced. That's what this is called when you put the other symbol in front of the variable. And we dereferenced it as a array or a list. Array and list mean the same thing in Perl. There's just two different words for the same thing. And then we used it in a join like we would with any other array or list and printed it out. So that is how array references work in Perl. And again, this is really powerful because if I want to make a copy of this, I can just say my copy equals $var, and I have copied the reference, but I haven't actually copied all the data. And if I run this again with the copy here, I can save and run, and there we have exactly the same result. In fact, if I wanted to change one of the values, I can change it through the dereference, and I can do this like this. I can say copy, and this is the way that you dereference a member of an array or a hash with the arrow like that. And then I can subscript, and I can say number 2, which remember they're zero based. This is number 0, this is element number 1, and this is number 2, and I can assign it some other value like 187. And now when I go and print it again, I'll just copy this line. And again, I'm working on the copy of the reference at this point, which is actually getting me all the way back here by dereferencing it. I go ahead and save that and run it. Then the first time it prints another string as the third element there, right there. And the second time it prints, instead, it prints this 187 because we changed it. And so we did all that changing through the reference. We didn't have to go all the way back to the original variable. And the original variable, of course, is a reference as well. The array itself, in this case, is anonymous because I declared it this way with the square brackets. I could have, if I wanted to, done it this way. I can say this is a list, and I can use regular old parentheses. And Eclipse just makes that a little bit harder. Just like that. And now I can say my var equals, and I can reference that list like that. And now everything will work exactly as it did before. We'll save this and run it. And we have exactly the same result. So what we've done here is we declared a list in exactly the same way as we used to, using the list variable itself and using the parentheses like we normally do for a list. And then we created a reference to it using the reference operator, like we did in the last movie with a scalar. That reference operator works for any type of an object in Perl. And we created a reference and we called it var. We made a copy of the reference and we printed it out from the copy of the reference, and we got all the way through to that original list because there it is printed out. And then we even went and we changed an element of the original list. And we got that result. So this is how array references or list references work in Perl. Again, you use the reference operator to create the reference, or instead you can declare it directly using the square brackets instead of the parentheses. You can copy it because a reference is just another scalar. You can make a copy of it and it's just copying the reference. You can dereference it this way to get the entire array. You can dereference it this way to get an individual element of the array, and you can even assign to it and change it. And then you print it out again and you get that changed value because you've changed the original object and you're still referring to it with the same reference. So that's how array references work in Perl.